asking for more pretend basketball. I don't remember seeing this insatiable demand, this unquenchable desire for more women's basketball. Matter of fact, if you look at ratings and attendance for Unrivaled, or the fact that absolutely no one is talking about women's college basketball, or the fact that the WNBA finals struggled to sell tickets with tickets going for less than $40, the market seems to be communicating the complete opposite. People are telling you with their remote.
The basketball world just watched something fall apart in real time, and it happened faster than anyone expected. Unrivaled's audience numbers didn't slowly decline or gently taper off. They collapsed. One moment, this project was being sold as the future of women's basketball, a bold, new revolution that would finally fix everything. 90 days later, that promise looks dangerously hollow. Viewership is bleeding out, fan interest is slipping away, and relevance is becoming harder to defend with each passing game. What makes this collapse so alarming isn't just the speed, it's the silence. Empty seats don't shout. They don't trend on social media. They just sit there, visible to anyone willing to look honestly. Those arenas are telling a story that marketing departments can't spin. A story of curiosity that didn't turn into loyalty. A story of hype that failed to convert into habit. A story of a product people tried once and didn't feel compelled to return to. Unidrama has only poured fuel on the fire. Instead of headlines about thrilling finishes or breakout performances, the conversation has shifted toward disputes, demands, and internal tension. That's not how you build momentum. That's how you lose it. Fans don't emotionally invest in labor battles. They invest in stars, narratives, and moments that make them feel something. Right now, Unrivaled is offering conflict without connection. And behind closed doors, once the lights shut off and the cameras stop rolling, one name keeps surfacing again and again. Not in promotional materials, not on highlight reels, in hushed conversations. Caitlin Clark. Her absence hangs over this entire operation like a shadow. The foundation is cracking, and those fractures are growing wider by the minute. This isn't about disrespecting the athletes who did sign on. This is about reality. Professional sports run on attention. Without a marquee attraction, without a gravitational center that pulls casual fans in, even the best intentions struggle to survive. Which leads to the uncomfortable but necessary question. Can any professional league truly succeed without its biggest draw? Or does everything eventually collapse once that central pillar is missing?
But once I looked into this potential schedule, the intentions of the WNBA became clear. Kat Engelbert wants to expand the regular season from 44 games to a maximum of 54 games. This would give WNBA players 10 more opportunities to prove they can't sell tickets. But I don't think this is about money. Or in the case of the WNBA, I don't think this is about increasing the amount of the money that they are losing.
This entire situation ultimately comes down to influence and control. Who truly holds power and who merely believes they do. Unrivaled didn't stumble into trouble by accident. It was built on excitement, not stability. And when your foundation is quicksand, you don't get to act surprised when everything sinks. When Unrivaled launched, it arrived with more noise than a championship parade. The promises were massive. Elevated broadcasts, real star power, competitive basketball delivered in a way fans had been craving for years. The messaging was relentless and confident. This wasn't just another league, they said. This was the blueprint for the future. This was the answer women's basketball had been waiting for. On paper, it sounded perfect. But paper doesn't sustain leagues. People do. And excitement alone is not the same thing as commitment. Early buzz can attract attention, but it doesn't guarantee retention. Fans might show up once out of curiosity, but they only return if something hooks them emotionally. That's where Unrivaled miscalculated. They assumed that presenting a better structure automatically meant people would care, that announcing innovation would generate loyalty, that branding could substitute for attachment. But audiences don't operate on spreadsheets or mission statements. They respond to moments, personalities, and stars who make games feel urgent. Instead of acknowledging that gap, Unrivaled leaned harder into the narrative. More promotion, more messaging, more emphasis on what the league represented instead of how it felt to watch. That works until it doesn't. And once interest starts slipping, it's brutally difficult to recover. This is what happens when ambition outruns demand. You can't force genuine interest into existence. You can't manufacture emotional investment just because you need it. When the foundation lacks real pull, everything above it becomes unstable. And now that instability is impossible to hide.
do think that these numbers have an effect on the CBA negotiations. One of the biggest prongs of the WNBA Players Association's position, platform, argument against the league has been that it isn't just one or two players that have created this spike in interest from the general public in the WNBA and have created this spike in revenue. These viewership numbers directly countermand that argument, because it is showing that without the participation of a few, specifically 2 or 3 select players, the league viewership has every other star imaginable, but it is still not generating nearly the viewership that we've seen with the WNBA, even though one of those stars didn't participate at all in the league last year. So we're seeing these viewership numbers not carry over. And I really think that the WNBA PA did themselves a disservice by failing to reach a deal before these numbers were released to the public, because it directly undercuts their
Audience metrics don't care about feelings. They don't respond to spin. They simply reflect reality. And right now, Unrivaled's numbers are devastating. No amount of marketing polish can disguise what's happening. This isn't a minor dip or a temporary correction. This is a collapse so severe it sends executives into quiet panic and makes investors start rereading contracts. When ratings fall this hard, it's not about patience, it's about survival. This is a kind of downturn that forces hard conversations behind closed doors. Conversations about exit strategies, budget cuts, and long-term viability. The type of conversations nobody wants to admit are happening, but everyone knows they are. Instead of confronting these problems head-on, Unrivaled now finds itself tangled in union drama that's turning the league into something resembling a soap opera. Athletes pushing for higher pay while viewership continues to spiral downward sends a deeply conflicting message. It's like demanding a raise while the building is on fire. And once again, one name keeps resurfacing in every internal discussion: Caitlin Clark. The desperation becomes obvious when a league's rescue plan revolves around someone who declined to participate. When your strategy depends on an absent figure, that's not vision. That's panic dressed up as planning. This situation exposes something deeper than the absence of one athlete. It reveals a misunderstanding of what actually drives audience behavior. Interest cannot be summoned through announcements or social media campaigns. Emotional attachment has to be earned, and Unrivaled hasn't earned it.
Rebecca Lobo is featured on ESPN, where she analyzes pretend basketball. And according to Becky Lobo, WNBA players are rapidly losing fan support in negotiations for a new CBA. Losing fan support? Losing fan support. In a sentence with just 3 words. It amazes me how Rebecca Lobo could find a way to include 2 words that could not apply any less to the WNBA. The only word in that
As if falling viewership wasn't enough, the union conflict adds another layer of chaos to an already unstable situation. While ratings decline, while investors likely question their commitments, while the league's future hangs in the balance, internal battles over revenue splits dominate the narrative. It's like arguing over furniture placement while the ship is actively sinking. The lack of situational awareness is staggering. When a league struggles to attract viewers, when audiences actively choose anything else over your product, the priority should be growth, not division. Yet here we are, watching ultimatums fly, while the financial base shrinks. And throughout it all, Caitlin Clark's absence looms larger with every passing week. Not because she's being glorified unfairly, but because her presence, or lack of it, reveals an uncomfortable truth. One athlete has become so central to attention that without her, everything else feels exposed. That doesn't diminish the talent of others. It condemns the structure that failed to create alternatives. A league that cannot sustain interest without one individual is not a league. It's a fragile performance propped up by hope. Union bargaining only works when players hold real leverage. Leverage comes from value, and value comes from viewers. Without viewers, demands lose power. Part 5, the final reality check. The timing makes this entire situation almost unbelievable. Unrivaled positioned itself as the ultimate solution. Better pay, better structure, better execution, proof that women's basketball could flourish if done correctly. Instead, it's becoming a case study in why this space remains so difficult. The interest isn't there. The fan base isn't there. The revenue isn't there. And no amount of venture capital can rewrite that reality. Yet players involved in the union dispute appear convinced they hold more power than they do. It's a dangerous illusion. Here's the hard truth. The league doesn't need individual players the way they think it does. What it needs is attention, viewers, cultural pull, someone who moves numbers, someone who fills seats, someone like Caitlin Clark. She reviewed the offer. She weighed her options, and she said no. That single decision tells you everything. When the biggest attraction in women's basketball declines, the problem isn't scheduling or contracts. The problem is appeal. And that's the reality Unrivaled is now forced to face. As if falling viewership wasn't enough, the union conflict adds another layer of chaos to an already unstable situation. While ratings decline, while investors likely question their commitments, while the league's future hangs in the balance, internal battles over revenue splits dominate the narrative. It's like arguing over furniture placement while the ship is actively sinking. The lack of situational awareness is staggering. When a league struggles to attract viewers, when audiences actively choose anything else over your product, the priority should be growth, not division. Yet here we are, watching ultimatums fly while the financial base shrinks. And throughout it all, Caitlin Clark's absence looms larger with every passing week. Not because she's being glorified unfairly, but because her presence or lack of it reveals an uncomfortable truth. One athlete has become so central to attention that without her, everything else feels exposed. That doesn't diminish the talent of others. It condemns a structure that failed to create alternatives. A league that cannot sustain interest without one individual is not a league. It's a fragile performance propped up by hope. Union bargaining only works when players hold real leverage. Leverage comes from value, and value comes from viewers. Without viewers, demands lose power.